It's 10 to 2 on the 8th of October 2022. 2 years ago, almost to the week, I started on a whim a beginner's course for astrology with an initial 30 or 40 students. It rapidly escalated. Since that last two years, I've done a number of courses, whether it be beginners, intermediates, looking at the signs, the planets, the houses, the aspects. The more complicated stuff like the astrocartography, the synastry, the asteroids, compatibility stuff, the nodes. And then I've done some advanced stuff on actual transits and progressions. And in this last 2 years, I've including the big workshops I've done on the history of astrology, I must have spoken to about 250 astrological students. Of that number, about 60 or 70 have been with me for the majority, not the whole period, but the majority of the last 2 years. And of that 60 or 70, there's about 20 or 30 have been to every workshop, or near as damn it. In this last few weeks, I've been putting it out to those existing students who have been with me since the start about, come on, you're good enough now, you've got the basics, you know what to do. So how are you going to make it work for yourselves? And I've put my students on the spot and said, okay, I want you now to talk to each other and do individual readings for each other. And I left them to do that for a couple of weeks, and then I started sitting in and listening to them. And there's about nine of them, 9, maybe 10. And listening to them, talking about each other's charts. Each one's putting their chart up each week for everyone else to have a look at. I mean, there's no hiding place when you get to this depth and level of astrology. And I'm sort of hosting it and chipping in the odd comment, but most of the time I'm just listening. And it's fantastic because I'm learning so much about astrology that I never knew just by listening to my students who I've taught. And it's so good because I've got the students in about 7 different countries, 3 or 4 different continents, all coming together at the same time to talk about astrology, not so much in terms of a lecture, but in terms of discussion, debate, and interaction. And I don't think that anyone else on the planet is doing this. It's great. They know that. I'm kind of crapping myself a bit because 2 weeks' time they're all going to be looking at my chart. But then, if everyone else is putting their chart up, you've got to put yours up as well, because there's no secrets with astrology. You can't hide. Your chart shows it all. And then I'm actually finishing off this course of astrology over the next 8 weeks. Between now and December, I'm doing the finale, six 2-hour-long sessions on the mythology, astronomy, astrology of the outer planets, looking at how each outer planet works in the houses, in aspect and by transit. So a big 1.5 to 2 hour session on the 6 outer planets, not for beginners, really not for beginners, but for those who already got a basics of astrological knowledge and want to use it at the day by day and year by year level. And there are spaces, so if you want to come along, just drop me a line. You know how to get hold of me, steve@stevejudd.co. But doing all this, and this especially listening to that hardcore rump of students who are now not just students, they are practical and practicing astrologers. They're actually explaining each other's charts, and to me that's an astrologer. And now analysing a chart, it's got me thinking about the nature of astrology. It's made me realise that actually, with all these students and the number of readings I'm doing, I'm finding that more and more I'm becoming more and more never understanding, but able to work with the energies of Chiron and Pluto in a way that I've never been able to before. It's almost if I don't do channeling and mediums, that's woo-woo stuff. I don't do that. But it's almost like the planets are talking through me at the moment, and some of the stuff that's coming out, I'm looking at myself and going, where did that come from? That is spooky. But it's happening. And yet, particularly with Pluto and Chiron, these planets are what? Smaller than our moon? Chiron's 20% the size of our moon. Pluto's 80% the size of our moon. Chiron's 2 billion miles away. Pluto's 4 billion miles away. Scientists and astronomers are going to be having a field day saying, how the hell can these planets influence us? And of course, if I was a scientist, I'd be thinking, I agree with you. But I'm not. I'm an astrologer. And whilst I cannot rationally and logically explain how these planetary influences work on us, I know they do, and I've got tens of thousands of statistics and thousands of clients with testimonials to prove that they do work. But, and here's the core of this video, because I've been working with these students for so long, and because they've been questioning the ways I work, it's been making me examine the way that I've worked with astrology. And I've been doing astrology 45 years now. And I've always said the planets impel, they don't compel. We retain free will. I don't personally have any business with fate or destiny. It's got me thinking. It's helping me see astrology in a different way. And I'm really going to go out on a limb here. We can hear Jupiter on a shortwave radio. We can see the light from the planets reflecting the light of the sun towards us. We can hear Jupiter on the radio. We can see the light of Saturn. And for our telescopes, we can see the light of Uranus and Neptune. Even with our good telescopes, we can see the reflected light of Pluto and Chiron. That light is actually hitting us. Therefore, it must be having an effect. I suggest that we're far too insensitive to pick up that effect. It's a homeopathic effect. But nevertheless, it is affecting us. Most people choose to either be unaware of it or ignore it. They're just not aware of it. They don't know it. Like I said, the planets impel, they don't compel. We can act in accordance with the planetary energies and use that subtle energy coming towards Earth in a way to enhance our lives, to improve our lives. It's like we're surfing a wave as it passes through our life. Or we can choose to react when that planetary energy affects us and we're unaware of it and we think, well, why is this happening? Why is my life suddenly changing? I think the days of seeing the planets as inert lumps of rock or gas are going to be seen in years to come as such an old-fashioned way of seeing things. From a more holistic paradigm, from a more holistic perspective, everything is alive. Everything bounces off everything else. By interacting with something, by observing something, you affect it. Don't get me going on Heisenberg and the uncertainty principle and quantum here, but there is something around this. And if we're observing the planets, then they're observing us. They're interacting on us and with us. And would astrology work if there weren't humans? Debatable. Certainly, there's a little bit of evidence to show that correlations between Jupiter, Uranus and the Sun are very strong in terms of earthquakes and volcanoes. But that's not affecting what we consider living beings, although the Earth is a living being. If there were only animals, would they be affected by the astrology? Of course they would. Coyotes would continue to howl at the moon. Oysters would continue to open up at full moon. But would they be able to consciously rationalise as we understand rationalisation? It's a good question. As above, so below is the other one. And the whole way astrology works is actually far less, I believe, these days, the planets creating patterns which we react to. Instead, It's the planets directly acting with us, that we are synergetic, symbiotic with the planetary energies, with the areas of the sky that these planets are in. The whole thing is alive. The whole thing has valence and a form of universal consciousness. And astrologers, and here I come back to my students, bless them because they're fantastic people. They are the people who can just begin to make sense of it. A world without astrologers, that would be sterile, dead, inert. They tried it once, they burnt them all, keeps coming back. Long may it continue. Catch you later, world. Bye.